Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at your parents' life, or maybe your grandparents' life, and felt this quiet, uncomfortable feeling that something just doesn't add up? Like they weren't smarter than you, they didn't work harder than you. A lot of them didn't even go to college, and yet somehow, on a single income, they bought a house. They raised kids, they retired with a pension, they didn't stress about groceries, and here you are, educated, working, doing everything you were told to do, and it still feels like you're running on a treadmill that's moving just slightly faster than your legs can go. Most people assume they're doing something wrong, that they're not disciplined enough, not ambitious enough, not saving enough. And that guilt sits with them quietly for years. But what if the treadmill actually did speed up? What if something changed, something real, something structural, and nobody sent you a memo? Because something did change on one specific day. And understanding what happened that day might be the most clarifying thing you do this year. Here's the thing most financial content gets wrong. When people feel behind financially, the conversation almost always goes back to personal behavior. Spend less, save more, stop buying coffee, make better choices, and look, habits matter. I'm not going to sit here and pretend they don't, but there's a massive difference between your habits making things harder and the actual system being different than it was 50 years ago. Because it is different, fundamentally different. And the shift didn't happen slowly. It happened on one Sunday evening in August 1971 in a televised address that most Americans watched, processed, mostly forgot about, and then went back to their regular lives. The full consequences of that night took decades to fully arrive. And by the time they did, they were just normal. They were just the way things are. So when you wonder why your salary doesn't stretch the way your parents did, why a house feels permanently out of reach, why your savings account earns almost nothing, a big part of the answer lives in that Sunday night. Let me take you there. It's August 15th, 1971. Richard Nixon sits down in front of a camera and tells the American public that the United States is suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Now, if you just felt your eyes glaze over a little, I get it. Convertibility of the dollar into gold sounds like something from an economics textbook that has no relevance to your rent payment. But stay with me, because this is where it gets personal. For most of American history up to that point, the dollar was tied to gold. Not perfectly, not without complexity, but in a real and meaningful way. Every dollar in circulation was supposed to represent something tangible, something real. There was a physical anchor. What this meant practically was that the government couldn't just create unlimited money. There were constraints, and those constraints, imperfect as they were, had a stabilizing effect on prices over time. Then Nixon cut the anchor. He did it for reasons that made short-term sense. The US was running deficits from the Vietnam War. Other countries were redeeming their dollars for gold faster than was comfortable, and the system was under pressure. So he made a decision that was supposed to be temporary, a short-term fix. It was never reversed, and from that point forward, the dollar became what's called a fiat currency, which just means its value is based on trust and government backing, not on any physical commodity. The government could now create money in quantities that were no longer tethered to anything tangible. Now here's where I want you to really feel this. Not just understand it intellectually, but actually feel it. When more money gets created without a corresponding increase in actual goods and services, each dollar that already exists becomes worth a little less. That's inflation in its simplest form. And inflation, when it runs consistently over decades, does something insidious to ordinary people. It punishes saving. Think about that for a second. The thing that every financial lesson since childhood told you to do, save your money, becomes a slowly losing strategy in a system where the purchasing power of that saved money quietly erodes every single year. In 1971, a median home in America cost around $25,000. The median household income was roughly $10,000. So a house cost about 2.5 times what a household earned in a year. Today, the median home price is somewhere around $400,000. The median household income is roughly $75,000. That's more than 5 times annual income. And in many cities, New York, San Francisco, Austin, Miami, that ratio is far worse. Wages did go up, but they did not go up at the same rate as the things wages are supposed to buy. And it's not just housing. The same pattern shows up in healthcare, in education, in childcare. The costs that matter most, the ones that determine whether a person can build a stable life, inflated dramatically faster than the income that's supposed to cover them. So when someone from your parents' generation says, "We just lived within our means and saved what we had," they're not wrong about what they did. They're just describing a different economic environment, one where living within your means could actually get you somewhere, where a savings account earned 5, 6, sometimes 7% interest, where a pension meant a company was legally obligated to fund your retirement, where a single income could reasonably cover a mortgage. That world didn't disappear because people got lazier. It disappeared because the rules changed. Now, I want to be careful here because this isn't a political video and I'm not here to tell tell you who to be angry at. Honestly, assigning blame for something this complex and this slow-moving doesn't change your situation either way. What does change your situation is understanding the environment you're actually operating in, not the one the old advice was written for. Because here's what happened after 1971 that most people don't fully connect together. When the dollar was untethered from gold and inflation became a persistent feature of the economy, the financial industry had to adapt. And the way it adapted was by turning almost everything into a financial product. Pensions, which were promises companies made to employees about guaranteed retirement income, started getting replaced by 401ks, which are investment accounts that you fund yourself, manage yourself, and bear the risk of yourself. The responsibility for retirement quietly shifted from employers and government to individuals. Consumer credit expanded dramatically. Credit cards, car loans, student loans. Debt became the mechanism through which ordinary people accessed the life that used to be accessible through wages alone. Buying a house, getting an education, owning a car, all of these became debt events rather than savings events for most people. And interest rates, which had been raised dramatically in the early 1980s to combat inflation, eventually came back down, then kept coming down, until your savings account was earning 0.01% annually, and the only way to actually grow money was to put it into markets, into assets, into investments that carried real risk. The entire financial landscape that ordinary people navigate today was shaped fundamentally by that one decision in 1971 and everything that followed from it. And almost none of that context is in the financial advice people receive. The advice stayed the same. The world it was written for changed completely. Here's the mindset shift I want you to walk away with. You are not failing at a system that was designed for you to win. You are navigating a system that was redesigned gradually, quietly, over decades. And the instruction manual was never updated. That's not a reason to feel hopeless. It's actually the opposite. Because once you understand the real terrain, you can make decisions that are actually calibrated to it. The people who build financial stability in this environment aren't doing it by following advice written in 1965. They're doing it by understanding that saving money in a low-yield account is no longer enough. That inflation is not a temporary problem, but a permanent feature to plan around. That building wealth now requires participation in markets, not gambling, not speculation, just consistent long-term ownership of productive assets in a way that previous generations didn't need to think about. They also understand something about debt that most people get wrong. Debt in an inflationary environment behaves differently than debt in a stable one. If you borrow money at a fixed rate and inflation rises, the real cost of that debt actually decreases over time. The dollar you borrowed was worth more than the dollar you're paying back. This is why real estate, despite being less accessible than it used to be, still tends to build wealth for people who get into it. They're locking in a fixed obligation while the asset's value and the rent they could charge tend to move upward with inflation. None of this is magic. None of it is a secret, but it requires a fundamental acceptance that the old model, work, save, retire, needs to be updated, not abandoned, updated. So what does this actually mean for how you make decisions starting now? The first thing is to make peace with the idea that keeping money in cash long-term is not the safe choice it feels like. It feels safe. Your balance doesn't go down, but in real terms, in what that money can actually buy, it is quietly shrinking every year. I'm not saying don't have savings. An emergency fund is real and important, but money that sits beyond your emergency reserve, doing nothing in a low-yield account for years, is losing ground. The second thing is to start thinking about investing not as something rich people do, but as the basic mechanism through which ordinary people keep up with inflation. Index funds, which just track the broad market and require no expertise to use, have historically returned enough to outpace inflation over long periods. Not every year, not without volatility, but over time, consistent. That's the tool this era offers in place of the pension. The third thing, and this is the one people skip because it feels too simple, is to understand how costs compound against you the same way returns compound for you. A car payment at a high interest rate over 5 years, replaced immediately by another car payment, is not just a monthly expense. It's years of financial energy redirected away from building anything. Not every debt is the same, but understanding which debts are working against you faster than your income can overcome them. That's a clarity worth having. And the last thing is just this. Give yourself the grace to recognize that feeling financially behind is not always a personal failure. Sometimes the math genuinely has not been in your favor. Understanding that doesn't remove your responsibility to respond thoughtfully, but it does remove the shame that keeps people frozen. Shame is not a financial strategy. Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about all of this. The people who lived through 1971 didn't fully understand what had changed either. They figured it out over years, over mortgages and grocery bills and retirement accounts that didn't quite work the way they expected. Life taught them the new rules slowly. You had have the advantage of understanding it now, of being able to look at the landscape clearly and make decisions with your eyes open rather than with an outdated map. That's not a small thing. Most people go their entire lives managing money based on rules that no longer apply to the world they're living in. They blame themselves for not saving enough in a world where saving alone doesn't work. They avoid investing because it feels like gambling, without realizing that not investing is the slow gamble. You don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to be a little more informed than you were an hour ago. And then a little more next month, and a little more after that. That's how this works. Not one giant transformation, just a slow, steady accumulation of understanding, which, if you think about it, is exactly how wealth works too. Take your time, think clearly, and be patient with yourself, because the game is long and you're still in it.